that and partnering with us to get us moving and getting our break going. So next we're bringing up Dr. Zarbabal to introduce his panel on financial planning. And Dr. Zarbabal.
Yes, okay, thanks. Hopefully everybody is energized. So what I'll do to start off is with 120-second, which is 2 minutes, survey. I posted this earlier in the morning. I'm just putting it back up. If you could just put your camera phone at this and in the next 60 to 120 seconds, answer 5 short multiple choice questions very, very quickly. And I'll key up our pre-recorded session. So I'll just give you guys 120 seconds to do that. This helps us know how the presentations are effective for our sponsors. So just 1 more minute. If you could just finish that up. There's no right or wrong answers. It's just whatever your personal opinions and beliefs are. Okay, hopefully you've had time to at least scan the QR code and you're in the middle of finishing that up. So what I'll do now is go into our recording and then I'll stick around for Q&A. So I'll be here live the whole time. Okay, so let me know if sound works here. Greetings. I am Professor Yahu Zarbabal. Let me know. And with me is
Celine Raphael.
And we represent
Medgar Evers College.
That's right. And we are sponsored by Carver Federal Savings Bank and working with SFE and PD to promote financial literacy. So what we have today for you guys is a special timely presentation on financial strategies during this COVID pandemic. What we hope you've done is use this scan tool to go to a pre-assessment test. 5 short questions just for fun to get your brain stimulated on the topics we're going to be covered. At the end, there'll be another one where you can measure what you've learned. So we all know that these times have been stressful, that they've been something that we've never seen before. And from a financial perspective, we want to focus on some do's and don'ts that will help us manage the situation. Celine will start off with the do's.
So here I'm going to start off with the do's. Hi guys, hope you guys are having a wonderful day and I hope the pandemic are treating you very well. So first thing we want to do is create a budget. Creating a budget basically gives you an overview of what you want your accounts. So by creating a budget, we want to see like where we can cut back. Example, as we see on the screen, streaming services. As you know, a lot of streaming services came out during the pandemic. And one suggestion I would say is to maybe share your services with other family members or friends. So if one person has Amazon or Disney, the other person could offer Netflix and Hulu. And that also, that's basically cut back on your budget. And then you can see where you can then focus more of your income or the finances that you have into the important things of life, which would be food, shelter, utilities, transportation, insurance, and ensure to have a lot of savings. Next. Saving. So saving is fundamental, especially through this time. We all have seen what the pandemic has done over the past year, and some have been lucky to save our jobs and some are not. It's important to create a savings. That way we have emergency funds for our low times. With regular savings, we can, when in time that we are down, we can still have something to fall back onto. Another good suggestion is also keeping cash in hand in case any ATMs or credit cards are not available to use for purchases of our regular daily supplies. Protect your credit. Your credit report and scores plays an important part of your future and financial opportunities. Meaning that a credit shapes what we can and cannot do financially in our life. Make at least the minimum payment due. It is recommended or suggested to make at least the minimum payment due, but I would also suggest to make as much payment as you can. If it be half or even the full payment on your credit card, if you have the finances too. If you are someone like myself and forget sometimes about paying bills, set up an automatic payment. That way that you wouldn't be worrying about the day when your due date come. You wouldn't have to be worried and say, oh dang, I forgot my due date. No, set it up automatically. That way that that stress of you remember to pay the bills is not upon your head. And that way you can also save time and you save physical contact with individuals. What factors influences your FICO's credit score? Now, your FICO credit score is basically your credit score. And this is what a lot of financial persons, if you're trying to buy a car, if you're trying to look into a house, you're renting, they look at your credit score. So the large percentage of our credit score look at our payment history. Payment history meaning that if you owe X amount of money on a credit card, they want to ensure that you are able or you are responsible enough to pay back the money that you borrowed from the credit agency. So we look at your payment history, look at the outstanding debt. You want to ensure that your student loans or your car loans or your mortgage is paid off for. We also look at the pursuit of new credits and the type of credit you use. If you use your credit cards on a regular, if you finance your furniture, you finance a car, they want to see how good are you at taking money and then giving back that money that you borrowed.
One thing I'd like to chime in here, because payment history is so important, if you've been able to pay down a credit card balance to zero, it would still make sense to keep that card open if it has strong payment history on it, because that will boost your credit score as opposed to entirely closing the account. In regards to outstanding debt and pursuit of new credit, many of us might be in transition to different places. When renting, your credit score will be pulled. You can ask that brokers do a soft pull, what's called a soft pull on your credit, which doesn't actually record as a check of your credit. It just looks at your history for the purposes of looking in place and those things.
Check your credit report. Accessing your credit card, especially during this time, is very important. Free annual report, you can actually check your free annual report on annualcreditreport.com. Check reports, you can see, make sure that your credit is high, dispute any information that may seem incorrect. Unfortunately, during this time, you can actually go on to Equifax, TransUnion, as you can see on beneath, and they're offering you free weekly credit reports through April 2021. By checking your credit reports, it gives you an overall idea of where you're at and where you need to be. Call your lenders and service providers. Many lenders announce a proactive impact by the COVID-19. With other natural disasters emergency, they will be willing to provide a forbearance, loan extensions, reduction in interest rates, and other flexibility on your repayments. Landlords, utility, and telecommunication companies are making provisions for deferral or adjustments of payments. So if you know that you are owing on your electrical bills or any bill of the sort, I would say reach out to those lenders, reach out to your landlords, explain the situation, maybe set up a payment plan, etc. Because during this time, we know that a lot of us are struggling and we just need the extra help. So I would say urge you to reach out, don't sit back, reach out and work out something with these lenders and providers. Contact your student loan providers. Many of us are students, some in school and some are out of school. One thing for sure is that we want to make sure that we are not building interest during this time. Luckily, the government has waived the interest on student loans, but it doesn't mean that you don't have to pay it in the future. They're actually just on a forbearance period, which means that you have to pay back at some point in time. I recommend going to student loan aid announcement and researching on what information, what resources are available for you as a student. If you are check your benefits. Get your benefits such as unemployment or continuous salary payments electronically. We want to ensure that if you are laid off of your job, reach out and get your unemployment going, see how long it's available for, or ensure that your salary is coming in via direct deposit and not via a check that could take a very long time through the Federal Post Office. Check the CARE Act. CARE Act, also known as Government Stimuli or Relief Act, was created during the COVID time. It's economic impact payment, or what we know as stimulus check, aka STIMI, which is a new word for it. Ensure that your stimulus check goes directly, either by direct deposit or by checks. If it go by checks, it can take a longer time, but I would recommend go on to irs.com/COVID virus non-filer and enter get my payment info here and see if you are eligible. Ensure that you meet the qualifications. Just know that the payments are not taxable. I know a lot of us are going to be filing our taxes. We would have received the $1,200 late of last year, then we would have received the $600, I believe, earlier this year, and now we'll be getting the $1,400 coming up. So make sure and check your payments. Go on irs.com, get my payment. Also, parents will receive an additional amount for dependents. And Social Security benefits also will automatically receive a check. So check it out with the irs.gov. Caution with money transferring. A lot of scammers out there are trying to get money from us, especially during this time. Ensure that the person that you're sending money through is secure. Some of the apps that you are able to transfer money that are now are Cash App, PayPal, Zelle, And I'm sure there are many, many others. So ensure that the person that you're sending money to is secure, and make sure it's not a scammer. A lot of people are getting scammed. I recommend you guys be safe, know where your money is going, etc.
One thing I
Don't be
want to
tricked by
chime
the
in here,
scammers.
we were fortunate enough to have the SEC, Security Exchange Commission, run a program at Medgar Evers about affinity fraud. Affinity fraud is when somebody appears to be a member of one of your social groups, whether it be a house of worship or a distant relative or an old schoolmate, and they present themselves in this type of affinity relationship and use what looks familiar to create some of these scams. Oftentimes, if you need to send money to somebody new, it's best to send $1 first before you send a larger amount to make sure it's received properly.
Don't. Oh, am I doing this? No. Professor, you're on mute.
Thank you, thank you. So predatory financial services are something we definitely want to try to avoid, but many of us don't know what those are. The simple definition, these are services that show up at very high costs of interest rate in desperate times of need. So they're things that people who are only in a dire situation would consider, and oftentimes it creates a debt hole that's very difficult to dig out of. Examples are cash checking services, payday lenders, sometimes second mortgages or title loans. These alternative services are in nature predatory because they're only used by people who are at the deepest level of need. Oftentimes, it would be better to take a retirement loan out from your retirement account, or even a bank loan, which might sound expensive, but would still be much cheaper than a payday loan. On the contract side, make sure that you are getting everything in writing. You're calling to renegotiate or explain your situation. The service provider may say something, but it really doesn't hold until you receive something in writing. We also know that panic is usually not helpful, just in general in life. And if we're investing for the long run, we want to keep a long run perspective. So the minute that we put money into the markets, we know that we're taking a risk. So that risk doesn't necessarily change for the long run simply because of a temporary pandemic. So the same risks that were available when you invested will be there throughout the long run. Those risks are supposed to be compensated with higher levels of returns. So make sure that you're still comfortable with the level of risk you were taking and that you have a long run perspective. On your investment side, during this pandemic, many new investments have become available in retirement accounts. So you want to look with your financial advisor or whoever your retirement account service provider is and see if there's new type of investments that better match your risk profile. In regards to taking money out early, usually that comes with a very steep penalty in regards to taxes and early withdrawal penalty before the age of, I think, 65 and a half it is. So you normally don't want to do that. However, the CARES Act has provided a way where you can do a certain amount of those withdrawals without penalty. So again, that would be a better thing to do than to say do a payday loan. On the large purchase side, this is something that you probably want to stay away from unless you're in a strong financial position. But things that are unnecessary, like new cars or large new, I would say recreational purchases, are things that probably don't make the best sense right now while you're trying to pad your savings. On the other side, though, large purchases like a home, if you've been setting up and saving for a home down payment, or you can use your retirement account towards a home down payment, well, then the low interest rates right now might make that a good use of debt. Risk management is very key now. The whole point of risk management is for the unknown in the future. So insurance is always something that you want to consider part of your investment portfolio. It's not a separate asset. It's just an asset that has negative covariance with the other things. So when life goes down in certain ways, insurance goes up. If you think of it that way, it's just a asset that gives you large levels of returns during difficult times. Scammers, again, we want to emphasize this. As the world becomes more electronic, the opportunities for scamming become larger. Now that we're working from home, people are sneaking into our Zooms, phishing our emails, creating shadow accounts in social media. So all these things require you to be up to date electronically. On the finance side, there are many scams that involve trading accounts, trading opportunities, foreign exchange pyramid schemes. So the FTC, Federal Trade Commission, has a link here that you guys can click on difficult situations in terms of investment scams, things that have become common enough that the FTC has actually listed out what's going on there. So in summary, key takeaways here are basically coming back to the basics. Budgeting is not new, but if you haven't done it, you got to start doing it now. Limiting spending is something you should always do, but now we've been forced to do. If you're working remotely, probably you're going to be able to save off of lunch, coffee, commuting expenses. So put that into a safe place and don't just spend it frivolously. Delayed gratification is a form of personal discipline. Let's wait until it's sunnier times before we start spending in ways that are highly recreational. Credit, as opposed to saying don't use credit, it's using credit responsibly. So if you found a nice piece of property that allows you to work from home with the home office and maybe go from paying large amounts of rent to a similar or smaller mortgage, then that would be smart credit. Insurance is something that you want to maintain. Personal insurance, health insurance, auto insurance, that's a form of risk management. And largely overall, you want to reach out to everybody you're in a financial relationship with. So that be your retirement account, your student loan providers, the government we are in a financial relationship with as well. And last but not least, keep the big ticket items for another time. So with that, let's just remind you that I highly appreciate if you take the way that we're able to have great people like Carver sponsor us is by kind of getting this data so that we can know how we can best help you and how we can best improve financial literacy among our community. So thanks, and we'll be on live for Q&A. So thank you guys. Most of our student ambassadors with the SFE and PD organization, they are working while they're at this conference, so we had to pre-record, but we're here for any questions you have if time permits. And I will just make sure that you guys see that post survey, which again, use your camera phone. I sound old saying camera phone. Use your phone and you scan this QR code, and in less than 120 seconds, we'll get your data on what you've learned.
I just want to say while you're doing that, for the old folks like me, you just turn your camera on. I went looking for the app. And I was like,
This is the phone app, which is not an app. It's part of your phone now. I did the same thing. So it's not when you're born, it's just technology.
Yes. I want to say how proud I am of the students and the faculty co-presenting. How often do you see faculty and students co-present on a tough subject like finance? And they even talked about the IRS. Shh.
Absolutely.
Lots of folks was calling either yesterday or today saying money got in my account. I just put a face on it. I didn't get any, but I'm happy for everybody who got some of that money. But what I say is that money will, like Professor Z said, that money will eventually go away. Use it responsibly, use it to invest, use it to save. Don't just spend the extra dollar because you got an extra dollar. But that was, I just want to say, as the dean, I was just so happy to see the student and the professor co-present on a tough subject. Finance is not an easy subject. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
You know, having good students makes everybody's life easier. There's several SFE and PD student ambassadors on right now. And so I just have people who I kind of just say, can you get this done? And they step to the plate, knock the ball out the park. Let's remember, you're not supposed to tell people when you get your money, Ms. Bennett. So keep that to yourself, or everybody's going to be calling you, asking you for something.
I know how to say no very well.
So I'll stop.
I've already begun saying no.
Thank you guys, whoever's completed this. Just take your camera phone, snap this, and get those results in. Thanks again, guys.
Is there any way so that we could just see the student team, if they can't take off their camera, if they could just put in the chat box who they are? I am just this powerful team that has come to us and that is sponsored by Carver Bank, who was our sponsor of last year's Carver. I can't tell you how proud I am. So we want to know who they are. So and I don't know how many they are. So just enlighten us, even if they're not here.
Yeah, so we have 4 student ambassadors this year. All of them this academic year are new ambassadors. So I worked with Celine on this presentation. Sharifa, who is actually on this BLING planning committee, is a student ambassador. And then we have 2 other student ambassadors who I believe are accounting majors, Stacy and Tanisha. So that rounds out our team. And our job is basically to promote financial literacy. They promote financial literacy to their peers.
Thank you. I want to give you another thanks. It was a great presentation. And I want to get ready to bring up, I know it was much desired by many of our students and many of our faculty as well and staff to know more about cannabis. And I'm going to bring up Tisha Brown, who will help collaborate and assist with anything that comes up with this panel, which is the blunt truth about cannabis entrepreneurship with Professor Mila Marshall and Corey Barnett. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So Corey is in the wrong room. He just contacted me. He's like, aren't you all on Google Meet? So I was like, no. And so I just forwarded him the correct login. So he should be here shortly. So in the meantime, between time, I will introduce myself and how I ended up here. So I am Mila Marshall. I'm an instructor of cannabis for City Colleges of Chicago. I am based in Chicago, but I also am a doctoral candidate in ecology and evolutionary biology. So I'm a scientist by training. And I also am currently the Sierra Club Illinois Clean Water Advocate. So a lot of my approach to cannabis is connected to sustainability, environmental justice, and the creation of a oh, I see it in the chat. I'm all here for the cannabis session. Creation of a sustainable and equitable industry. And so I got here because I actually wrote an article on Corey Barnett for Cannabis Business Times. And I also am going to be making some comments on taking advantage of creating opportunities for yourself with the very immature market. But Corey has just logged on, so I am going to invite him to introduce himself right now. Hey, Corey.
Hi, how are you?
Doing good.
Guys,
so
am I able, can you guys see me and all that good stuff?
I think they can, yeah.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Well, my name is Corey Barnett. My background is that in a prior life, I was an engineer. And after that, after going to business school myself, I ended up spending some time as an investment banker and working with a venture capital fund, doing half the year or third of the year, at least, out of the country, which was not really conducive to starting a family. And my wife made that blatantly obvious and evident. And so I ended up leaving that career and I started buying and investing in small businesses on my behalf. When I got the opportunity to serve on the board of the San Diego Medical Collective, I jumped at it. It was one of the first cannabis collectives in Southern California, and I think the 9th oldest in the San Diego greater metropolitan area. I ended up actually buying that from the existing base of owners, and that was my entry into the cannabis industry in 2008. We were able to grow that operation to 2 different locations, and at one point in time in the greater San Diego metropolitan area, we were 2 of 238, and my 2 locations were 2 of the 10 largest. At that time, we also made a myriad of other products through a cultivation operation that we had in Southern California. But frankly, the legislation in that market was archaic at best at that time. So I ended up selling those operations and coming home here to Washington, D.C., where I ended up getting the opportunity to win both a license to cultivate and a license to dispense. That was the founding of District Growers and the Metropolitan Wellness Center. And we've been growing those. I and my team have been growing those operations over the last, say, 7-8 years now. And that's a little bit about my background and a little bit about me.
Wonderful. So how we decided to have our kind of 25, 30 minutes, one is to be engaging. So please do, as we talk, if you have questions, put them in the chat box. But then also for this to be more of a conversation where I'm kind of asking Corey about his experience on the business side. And so I am a consultant. I'm principal owner of Herb and Planning Associates, HERB. While I focus and have clients that are cannabis focused, I do help other small businesses, nonprofits, and projects focus on sustainability and different aspects of their business related to the environment. And so as an instructor, I got into this primarily because when the legislation was being written for adult use recreational, I was on both sides of the conversation. I was on the environmental side and helping Illinois' legislation become the greenest legislation in America. And I was, as a consultant, helping those on the social equity side understand some of the nuances that either connected with environmental justice or the barriers that this green legislation was going to impose on small craft growers because of environmental literacy being a bit lower in African-American and minority communities. And so as an educator in this industry, there's a bit of mismatch in terms of people's expectations of where they want the industry to be and looking at what it is that they want to do in it. So would you agree or disagree, you can put it in the chat box, that a lot of the conversation on wealth building with cannabis has been focused on dispensaries and dispensary operations. Would you agree or disagree that most of the conversation on wealth in the Black community with regards to cannabis has been focused on dispensaries? Okay, so Shannon says agree. Thank you for responding. Arlette, agree. It's interesting because there's an entire supply chain, Corey, right? Can you talk a little bit from your perspective on what the need is for a broader understanding of the opportunities of wealth building through cannabis by expanding conversation across the supply chain?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. As we begin to look at the cannabis industry, most people focus largely on the demand curve, right? How many people out there utilize cannabis and what is the end use product that they're using, right? But in order to bring that product to market and bring that and make that product available, there is a whole host of things that need to take place, much like any other industry. To that end, it's not just about your ability to cultivate cannabis or process cannabis or sell cannabis. Just like businesses in other industries need legal services, need marketing services, need advisory services, there are packaging, there's distribution, there is all sorts of production services and things of that nature that don't necessarily require licensing, that we are seeing a significant opportunity in. And luckily, we're also seeing, for the brothers and sisters that are not able to get into the space directly touching the plant, they're able to make inroads in those areas as well. In addition to that, if we step even one rung out, it's estimated that for at least the next 10 to 20 years, every state will be dealing with a myriad of issues that require a number of organizations to advise state officials and regulators on how to set up their markets, how to regulate their markets, and things of that nature. And so that's creating all sorts of opportunities for insurance providers. That's creating opportunities for advisors to state officials. And Mila, I know that you've done a lot of that work as well. And so, as you look at the industry and you're thinking about your skill set, and you're thinking about what your passion is, what I often advise young entrepreneurs coming into this industry to do is to try to match the two, right? Figure out where your passion is real and relevant, and figure out where your skill set can be enhancing to that. And that may not necessarily be actually with a dispensary, right? It may be providing some service to a dispensary. It may not be with a cultivation operation. It may be providing packaging services or trimming services or testing services or something like that to a cultivator. And so there's a tremendous opportunity out there, and let's not look just at the direct, sort of easy thing that everyone is going at. But, I would also caution us, and let's recognize that it is essential that we get Black ownership at the plant also, right? The otherwise, the businesses that we do end up ultimately creating will be forever subservient to businesses that may or may not at times have their real and honest interest at heart. And so if we're going to introduce an industry into our economy that is for at least the last 5 to 7 decades has been used as a tool to our community's demise, we do need to make sure that we have a level of participation in the industry in every place along the supply chain, and that and those of us who are lucky enough to actually get a cultivator license or a producer's license or a dispensary license, make sure that we're taking the time to be conscious in thought and finding businesses owned by people who look like us, and then ushering them up and helping them to build their skill set and things like that too. And so as we look at opportunities, if we want to be most successful, we have to definitely focus on our passion and our skill set. But we do need to obligate everyone to figure out how to be good partners and look for others and maintain an open door so that everyone who's talented enough to be successful gets a real shot and a real opportunity in this space.
Corey, I always love asking you questions because I get to hear you repeat the same thing again, just in different ways. And I feel like I am a reflection to some of your comments. So for example, having a background in agriculture, people expected me, oh, you're definitely going to do a craft grow. But I'm a researcher. I'm much more valuable as an educator, as a curriculum developer, as a public speaker, and as a consultant to have my hands and touches on influencing the market for multiple businesses than just focusing on a plant touching business. So I found my space, which is what brought me here. And one of my favorite ways of diversifying my cannabis stream of income is writing, which is how I ended up with Corey Barnett. Some of the absence of diversity within cannabis is either an artifact of we always say systemic racism and intentional exclusion. And then the other side of it is, are you as a professional creating opportunities and seeking out opportunities for yourself? And so I'm not the first person to write about cannabis, but there are very few of us that are in the sector that are seeking opportunities to write. And so when I did that, it created a relationship. So now I love being a published cannabis author. And so I also just wanted to lift up Haraji's question about felonies and cannabis. And so here in Illinois, there is expungement for marijuana related offenses. Many of the operators here in the state of Illinois also seek to work with hard to employ populations. And so that includes felons with records from different offenses. Now, each state does have their own decriminalization legislation, but the interesting part about cannabis is if you're trying to grow hemp, doesn't matter what state, if you have a drug-related felony in the past 10 years, you will not be able to grow hemp. However, you will be able to grow marijuana, and that is because hemp is federally legal. marijuana is federally illegal. At the state level, marijuana can be decriminalized, but it might depend on if it's for medical or medical and adult recreational. So Corey, can you talk a little bit about the different opportunities in selecting where you place your investments, whether you want to focus on hemp or you want to focus on medical marijuana or adult use recreational? What are some ways in which, you know, students and even faculty members can think about where it is they want to place their energy and attention?
Yeah, you know, kind of like as a lifelong investor, I kind of go back to something that I sort of alluded to a little bit earlier, right? You know, I invest where my passions exist and where I can understand things. You know, typically, you know, if you're looking at the spectrum of opportunity across the entire cannabis industry, be it or cannabis / hemp industries, then there are plenty of places where I think there are viable investment opportunities, right? You know, and so once you are able to sort of identify what you think is something you can understand and a place where you can actually engage in effective investment monitoring, then that is where I would suggest you act. Now, if you're thinking about where I think the biggest opportunities are, I think that's a different question in its entirety, right? And so I like what's happening in the world of processing, right? And in the world of production right now. I believe that that is going to maintain its margin over the next 10, 15, 20 years. I think that there will be a lot of products that are come and go. And to the degree that someone is able to predict the right producers and the right product makers, I think there's a significant opportunity to ride that wave for a sustained amount of time. Tech in the industry is going to be huge and is almost not even talked about in this space. And when you think about the cannabis industry right now, it is operated at the supply chain. It's almost completely analog. That means that a grower typically works out a deal to sell his or her product with a phone call and almost no documentation, right? That cannot sustain itself if our industry is going to become worth 50, 60, 70 billion dollars sometime in the future. There have to be the proper systems put in place, the proper technological platforms that put in place to make the supply chain efficient. And we're starting to see some of that technology be thought about, but it's all incredibly archaic right now, right? You know, so if you think about, if I am, let's say, Whole Foods, I don't have to talk to most farmers in order to be able to buy the products that I need for the produce section. And certainly it's not a guy showing up with a truck full of oranges and me looking at those oranges and each Whole Foods making a decision, but more so they have a supply chain platform that allows farmers to actually present their product, present the quality standards, and then allow Whole Foods to make a decision one way or other. That doesn't exist in cannabis. Forward markets don't exist in cannabis. Insurance procurement for distribution and different things of that nature is archaic and almost non-existent, and everything is overcharged. And so to the degree that there are tech companies out there that are seeking to provide innovative solutions, I think they're going to be able to get their footing. And certainly we've seen a lot of I guess, technology providers that are on the front end operating and thinking more so about POS systems and things like that, Leafly, LeafLogix, MJ Menu, MJ Freeway are all sort of dealing with technology at the retail level. But I think that that's the tip of the iceberg, if you will. I think there's going to be a tremendous amount of opportunity to provide technology solutions that solve problems in the industry in the future. That's where I would spend a lot of my time investing if I wasn't already where I was.
Oh, so you got that pot tip here. I would totally trust it. I totally believe your story. And I do that also because when you think about what are some of the barriers to these other businesses evolving, there's also the banking issue, right? Like cannabis right now is a pretty underbanked industry. And some of the intersectional issues for, you lifted up businesses that need to serve the cannabis industry. And oftentimes, as we talk about inequity in cannabis, we don't turn around to look at the inequity in which the industry has evolved. And so, for example, I think 47% of African Americans are unbanked or underbanked. And also there's a reality, at least here in Chicago, that banks invest 13 cents in African-American communities in comparison to $1 to every white community. And so we have these inequities within the banking sector, period. And now we're turning our attention saying, hey, cannabis, you know, like you need to be equitable, but there are these other kind of barriers within industries that we need to dissolve in order for us to be able to have $2 billion of liquid assets, 800 credit score, and get the loan. Because what we know now is that it doesn't matter if your business is, you know, federally legalized or not. It's hard to be an entrepreneur when you're African American for some reason, and we do have to make sure that we turn our attention there. So you've talked a little bit about, you know, opportunities and where it is you need to be thinking. Can you? I'm an environmentalist. I would love for you, you know, to talk a little bit about the way in which you grow. And so I'm going to kind of cue this up. We know climate change is happening. We do know that African Americans at the body level are disproportionately impacted by the impact by climate change, but that includes our businesses, our landscapes, our supply chain. We're extremely sensitive to those pressures. Think about if your business is barely operating in the black, maybe you were in Texas, right? And all of a sudden the power grid goes off. Do you have enough capital and cash flow to recover? Do you have the insurance and the systems in place to make sure that you can stay afloat? And so here we are with this new industry and this crisis going on. Can you talk a little bit about the method that you use for growing, as well as some insight for environmental awareness of the next generation of Black business owners? Oh, wait, you're muted, Corey.
I was saying, wow, the environmental opportunities are huge. But, you know, when you